Welcome, everybody, to the October 2nd, 2023 Finance Committee meeting. For those online, Mr. Roybal, Mr. Escabel are here in the committee room with me. Dr. Aldridge is on Zoom. A couple of housekeeping items. If you plan to make a statement under the public comment section, you will please approach the podium and press that button until the green light turns on and identify yourself for the record. Everyone, please make sure that your cell phones are either on mute or vibrate. And with that, I know, but on that one, it's green. Oh, it's red. Sorry. I get mixed up on that. Okay. With that, please read the first item.
Sure. Item number 10, ordinance second reading, creating section 12.04.240 mobile storage containers on public right-of-way permit required of chapter 12.04 streets, sidewalks, and driveways generally of title 12 streets, sidewalks, and public places of the municipal code of the city of Cheyenne, Wyoming, and making a conforming amendment as specified.
Staff report.
Mr. Chairman, John Brody, Deputy City Attorney. Depending on the committee's preference, I was just going to walk through the ordinance and sort of explain the ins and outs and how it's going to function if it were to pass. Would that work? And then I guess this is a proposal that was brought forward by Dr. Aldrich, and I don't know if she wants to make any statements before I do that, or if I should just proceed. Dr.
Aldrich, do you have anything you wanted to say before Mr. Brody gives the explanation?
Just a quick note to let my colleagues know that this is a result of a public forum that was held in March of 2021, addressing this issue of storage containers in the right-of-way. And due to some staff transitions and changes and just other things that have been coming to the front burner, this had been set aside, but we're back on track and glad to be able to have Mr. Brody walk us through this new proposed ordinance change.
Thanks, Dr. Aldrich. Go ahead, Mr. Brody.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I should say that after this was introduced, our office did have meetings with the city engineer's office. So I believe the city engineer may have some comments on this proposal as well. I'll just start going through it. So beginning on page 1, subsection A, that just creates the requirement that mobile storage containers be permitted in order to sit on the public right of way. Of note, and this may come up during the city engineer's comments, currently the definition of mobile storage container doesn't include rollaway dumpsters. It's going to only include those containers that you would store items in, whether it's construction items, household goods, what have you. This isn't a practice that's currently done in the city, but subsection A also makes it clear that these containers can't be placed on any sidewalk within the public right of way, sort of a belt and suspenders measure. Moving on to subsection B, this requires a 3 days prior to receiving a permit or the placement of a container pursuant to a permit. The person has to apply to the city engineer for that initial permit. I can't say in discussions with the city engineer's office, it appears that this 3-day prior notice period is not enough. Customarily, I think it takes about 10 days for the city engineer's office to process other types of encroachment permits. So that may be something the committee wants to consider if this moves forward. Subsection B also specifies the types of information that needs to be included in the application that's submitted to the city engineer. It needs to identify the proposed location, name and contact owner, or name and contact information of the property owner or the tenant for the property, and then the name and contact information of the business through which the person is obtaining the mobile storage container. It also provides the city engineer a bit more flexibility to include additional information if he or she deems it necessary. And then lastly, this would probably be the way it would be administered anyway, but belt and suspenders, the permit, there's a requirement that the permit be displayed on the exterior of the mobile storage container once it's placed on the public right of way. Moving to subsection C. Subsection C is sort of the meat of how the program would operate. It's going to specify permit renewals, permit periods, and permit fees. So under the current proposal, you would apply for a permit and you would get the first 30 days free. There would be no fine, or there would be no fee for that permit. You would then have one renewal. And I should say, under the entire program, no mobile storage container can be placed on the public right of way for more than 120 days within a calendar year. So you're going to have your first initial permit, and then you can renew that permit 2 times for a total of 120 days. The first permit renewal is $150, and will give that person an additional 60 days for the placement of that mobile storage container. The second permit renewal and final permit renewal authorizes an additional 30 days at a price of $750 for that permit fee. Dr. Aldrich can probably speak to this more, but my understanding of why the permit numbers are set where they are is to function as a sort of deterrent, so that really the property owner has the motivation to do whatever sort of house project they're working on, or whatever the case may be, and then get the mobile storage container removed from the public right of way. But that may be something the committee wants to consider, whether those prices are appropriate, should be increased, decreased, whatever's in the committee's discretion. Moving on, subsection D. I already spoke to this really, but that just limits the number of permits and permit renewals you can have within a single calendar year. So that just sets that 120 days within the 12-month period. And then E and F are essentially, again, belt and suspenders. E would prohibit these containers from being placed or removed between 7 p.m. and 6 a.m. Just to sort of maintain the quietude of neighborhoods. Subsection F, I don't believe this would occur, but again, this prohibits the stacking of mobile storage containers, and it prohibits people from placing other additional items on top of a mobile storage container. Again, with our weather and the elements, that probably doesn't happen, but plan for the worst, I guess. Moving to subsection G, this just provides some discretion with the city engineer's office to look at all the factors that may be at play in whether a permit is going to be granted. The city engineer would have the authority to grant, conditionally grant, or deny a permit. So, for example, there may be places within Cheyenne where the street is just not wide enough to place one of these containers. In large part, these containers are about 8 feet wide, regardless of the company. So obviously, there are places in Cheyenne where you just simply can't put one of these in the public right of way without disturbing the traffic patterns and basically all the traffic that would try to go down that road. And then the sort of other little, I guess, nuance to that is that the city engineer can also revoke permits. And, you know, it seemed important that if that type of authority is provided and the permit fees are at a level that they are, that if that authority is exercised, that the permittee would be entitled to a pro rata refund of the number of days that were remaining on their permit upon the revocation or without the revocation. And then moving to subsection F, that's just the penalty provision. Of note in subsection H is the last sentence, which says that each day of a continuing violation shall constitute a separate offense. The reason for that is that if you don't want to get the permit and you see that you can just ignore the law and just maybe pay a $750 fine, you're probably just going to do that. Or some people may, I guess I should say that. So what this does is it just adds a little bit more of a hammer for the enforcement mechanism. In speaking with the city engineer's office, 99% of the city of Cheyenne is, responsible with these containers. So again, this is just planning for the worst. So happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Brody. Please stand by. Are there questions from the committee for Mr. Brody? Mr. Escabel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, Mr. Brody. When you said that an individual could only apply for a certain number of permits per year, does that go for a company that says they flip houses and they come in with one of those containers and then a month later they're going on to another project?
Well, Mr. Chairman, really the limitation on the number of permits you may have is tied to the particular location for which the container permit was obtained for. So if it's multiple locations, then you'd have multiple deadlines or multiple prohibitions, I guess, respective to those individual properties.
And just Falk, can you have more than one at a time?
I would say that this proposal only contemplates one mobile storage container. I know the storage containers come in multiple lengths. So it's my understanding, I don't work in this business, obviously, but if your project required a lot of storage space, you would purchase, maybe a 40-foot instead of a 20-foot, 60-foot, I don't know, but that'd be my answer.
I guess what I'm getting at is that if a company that's flipping houses, they might be working at 3 different locations at the same time, so they would be able to have 3 permits at the same time,
Yes,
3 different locations. Okay.
yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee for Mr. Brody? Dr. Ald? Mr. Cobb, we're still on staff report. Do you have anything you wanted to add? Thank you, Mr. Brody.
My brain is not functioning. There we go. So I just had a few things. Sorry, Tom Cobb, city engineer. We did, as John had explained to you, we did meet separately after this had started through. And I just wanted to be clear on some of the comments that I have, or I would like to at least express to you before this moves much further. The first thing is as he indicated, the mobile storage containers, we really need to add roll-off dumpsters to this. That's probably one of they're wider and they don't have a top on them, but it's very similar. So that definition needs to be added to this. And that's in that paragraph A. And then secondly, on B, we've given this some thought this morning about the 3-day business period. And I think we can make that work based on what we understand, the way the companies work, that they would meet their deadline as well. So we're willing to say that is fine. 3 days would be fine. From a logistics standpoint, we'd look at this going electronically and by PDF. Eventually with OpenGov, it's going to be very simple. But right now, what we're looking at is a PDF or a paper copy that would directly be given to all these container businesses. So they could just fill it out right there as they're filling out their lease agreement. So to make this very simple. And Mr. Klon has indicated to me that we'd look at a separate permit. We were going to reuse our right-of-way encroachment permit, but this would just be a separate one. So to make it really clean, couple of boxes to add and done. Thirdly, I think we should add an insurance requirement. And so these companies need to be licensed and insured, and there should be a minimum insurance requirement for that. Based on what we've heard from them in the past, I think the $1 million as we would require with most of our contracts is appropriate. And again, this is for if somebody gets hurt with these things out on the street, there needs to be insurance on there. Secondly, or thirdly, I would recommend that we do a follow-up meeting directly with the storage container companies prior to finalizing this ordinance, because we haven't contacted them since that meeting in 21, as Dr. Aldridge just indicated. So these folks need to have some say in what this is going to look like and how it's going to function. And then just to add the last part, there needs to be also a section I on the last one. So it needs to be a variance have the ability for myself or whoever I assign to do this to allow some special circumstances beyond the 120 days. There might be cases where somebody has a legitimate reason they can't meet this 120-day window. Let's say they have a fire at their house and they're redoing half of their house. They're not going to get done in 120 days. It's just not practical. So there needs to be some procedure in place to allow a variance to this actual thing that we can issue to them. That's it, I believe, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Comments from the public? Oh, wait. Hang on, Mr. White. Dr. Aldridge, did you have a question for Mr. Brody or Mr. Cobb?
No, I just had a comment, Chairman White, and that's that I did reach out to the mobile storage container folks after I had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Cobb and Mr. Klon and Mr. Bay on this particular proposed ordinance 2 or 3 weeks ago. I reached out. I believe that Kurt Messenger, who is one of the primary container rental agents, is in the audience today, and he and I visited this morning. So there has been some contact since that meeting in March of 2021 between myself and the city attorney's or the city engineer's office, as well as Mr. Messenger. So just wanted to bring you up to that speed on that and let you know that I believe Mr. Messenger is there.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for that information, Dr. Rodrich. Okay. Okay, going to public comment, Mr. White.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Michael White. I have a few comments. When Mr. Cobb brought up, roll-off dumpsters, we have a number of issues when, roofers come into town. A lot of times they park them on the public right away. Number two, job trailers. A number of years ago, the city building department decided not to enforce inspections of job trailers. A lot of times them job trailers are in the public right away. But one of the biggest comments I have is on the storage containers. You drive around town, if you see a hotel, motel being built, remodel on a bank, I've seen as a number of roll-offs, trailers that they store their equipment in. We have an apartment complex here in Converse. There's about 8 of them stored on that project right now. When I did the Capitol project up here on the Capitol, we had 55 storage containers. Motel people have a lot of different contractors. So, and my other question is, respectfully so to Mr. Cobb, permitting is a good issue. It's sometimes tough to enforce. And you also have the other guys that say, myself, I can recollect when I was emptying out a house that I'd no longer owned, I put it out there in the right-of-way property. I had it out there for 180 days, but that's probably circumstances under the control of me, myself. But I guess the question I would also ask from Dr. Aldridge, where's the big problem with this right now? You see it all over town with these storage containers, these roll-offs. And I respectfully say that she's got a good point, but my last comment is, who's going to enforce that if somebody does put a roll-off or storage container in an area where they don't have a permit? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
If we have any comments online from the public, you need to raise your hand and then I'll give you access to the meeting. So any questions, please raise your hand. Mr. Messenger, you should be able to unmute yourself.
My name's Kirk Messenger. I just wanted to comment on the basically that we don't have very much problems with dealing with the city. We put them where the customer wants them. And if there is any problem, we address it, move them. And as far as time, they just really are basically timely with all the containers. If they're moving, they're usually in and out of there pretty quick. If they have a fire or they need restoration done, something like that, remodeling, that does take longer. And there's, like Tom said, that there is extenuating circumstances that they do last longer than the 120 days, but it's rare. But there is those times that they do last longer there. So I think that there needs to be provision in there. And the fee, I think, is pretty high for the people renting. So I guess with that, I'd turn it back over to you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Messenger. Other comments from the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve on second reading.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. Are there comments from the committee? Dr. Aldrich.
Yes, sir. Through you, Chairman White, I just wanted to respond that, I think that initially when we held the forum in March of 2021, there had been a storage container on Windmill that had been there for over 12 months. And it was due to, my understanding was a fire. So I think that that does happen, but it's very, very rare. And as Mr. Messenger noted, they have been extremely responsive anytime there's been a problem or concern. Evidently, we do have more of these containers and Connex containers coming into our community for portable storage and mobile storage. And I know that my colleague in Ward 2, Councilman Seagrave, has had a concern about this as well in Ward 2, not just in Ward 3. But I did want to note that I think that this is probably a rarity, but becoming more and more likely with the influx of additional containers being brought in. So for that reason, that was the reason that brought this proposed ordinance forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aldrich. Mr. Roybal.
Through you, Mr. Chair. This is for the Attorney's Office, or John. Hearing the staff or the city engineer's concerns, can we get an amendment written up with that on it by the next Monday?
Mr. Chairman, do you mean granting the city engineer the ability to waive the 120-day deadline?
That and he had probably 5 or 6 different things that he thought we should add in.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I can prepare a substitute. I would just need specifics on what that substitute needs to include, and happy to work with city engineer's office on that point.
Thank you.
That was a good question. I was going to ask that myself. Mr. Cobb.
Mr. Chairman White, through you, sir, could I ask that maybe you postpone this for 2 weeks so we maybe could get with all the companies and get their input on this as well, not just Mr. Messenger, and then properly get this back to you?
Well, I'd have to check with Dr. Aldridge on that since she's a co-sponsor, and see if she'd be okay with that. What I would prefer to do is perhaps see what can be done language wise before the next meeting of the governing body. And then if we have to postpone it there, we can postpone it there for 2 weeks.
This is just on second reading,
Right.
so we have the time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Escabel.
I think the least 4 things I'd like to see in the substitute would be adding roll-offs, changing the time of the permit from 3 days to 10 for the application, adding the insurance requirements, and then adding section I, the variance. I don't know if there's any others you guys want to put into that substitute.
I think those are all good suggestions that were mentioned before. I think Mr. Brody and Mr. Cobb can probably get together and include the 4 things that you mentioned. Any other comments from the committee? Dr. Aldrich?
Yes, Chairman White, I just wanted to mention to you that there are currently, to my understanding, 2 companies that rent these in our community, both of which I contacted after I met with Engineer Cobb's office. The largest being Mr. Messenger's business, and the other one not being located or owned locally. So I don't know that postponing by 2 weeks to contact those entities is going to produce any more comments. I definitely am not opposed to that, but again, this is on second reading, so I would like to move forward with a substitute and move from there.
Thank you. Ms. Nemetchek, did you have a comment to make?
Vicky Nemechek, Public Works. I just wanted to say, if you're going to include roll-offs, there are multiple companies in town that supply those, and that would be many additional businesses.
Understood. Thanks for that. Mr. Roybal?
Ms. Nemechek, do you have the list of those companies?
We do have a list at sanitation. They're required to annually provide that list, and each container must be identified on the container itself with a phone number and a company name in case of a fire or some kind of an emergency.
Yeah, so we do have the ability to contact that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the committee?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Escabel?
my final comment would probably be that I don't know if we could have a difference between when an individual for residential puts one in because they're having some remodeling done or they're moving, and a business that's coming in and building a large project that, requires them to have multiple storage units and for a longer period of time as well.
Mr. Klon? Just press the button if you could, please. There you go.
Doug Klon, Construction Manager for the city. Regarding that, through you, Mr. Chairman, Councilman Escabel, regarding the companies that come in and do construction, if they're gonna place roll-offs or storage units in the right of way, they already cover that in their right of way permit. That's part of what they have to do as a construction company. Majority of the time, though, those containers and roll-offs are usually on the private property that they're developing. So it's very rare that we do have them in the street, but when that's the case, that street is usually closed for construction. So these issues aren't part of this problem. This is basically pertaining only to residential use in neighborhoods.
Information. Thank you. If there are no other comments from the committee, all those in favor of the ordinance, and this is on second reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, that ordinance moves forward. Mr. Escabel voting no. Next item, please.
Number 20C, agreement between the City of Cheyenne and Creative Outdoor for construction of and placement of benches, shelters, and concrete pads within and along bus routes upon which advertising may be sold, and establishing a fee for use of city right-of-way.
Okay. Staff reports on Zoom.
Renee Jording, Cheyenne Transit.
Hi, Renee.
Hello. This is a contract renewing an agreement with Creative Outdoor. They manage and maintain and place the bus benches that are along our fixed route services. And this is a contract that's going for another 10 years. We have worked with them for the past 10 years. And I am happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Renee. Stand by. Questions for Renee from the committee? Hearing none, comments from the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee? Dr. Aldridge?
Chairman White, through you, I did have one question. As I was reading through this proposal, I understand that these benches are to be concrete. I'm assuming that this is the same company that provides the green hard plastic benches currently. Is that correct?
That is
Renee?
correct.
Okay, yes.
Okay, and Chairman White, through you, my next question is will these benches have some sort of, it's a common mechanism in urban areas now to have some sort of seat dividers or some sort of texture to the benches that make them less likely to become attractive for sleeping on? And I'm wondering if these benches will have that feature so that we can try and maintain those for individuals using the transit system versus individuals that are experiencing homelessness.
We can definitely ask the question. However, that was not included in the contract, but I am more than happy to contact the vendor and see if they can definitely use those kind of benches.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor of the agreement, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No one's opposed. That item moves forward. Next item.
Number 20D, memorandum of understanding between the city of Cheyenne and Laramie County to provide public transportation services to Laramie County Community College and for an area of Laramie County immediately adjacent to the city.
Staff report.
Renee Jordan, Cheyenne Transit. This is our annual agreement with Laramie County to provide services to the county. It provides $88,000 in non-federal funds that we use as local match for our 5307 federal grant. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Renee. Questions for Renee? Dr. Aldrich.
Chairman White, through you, I just was curious as to if we have what amount this has increased since our last memorandum of understanding to accommodate for the increased fuel costs that we're experiencing.
Renee, do you have an answer for us on that?
I do. Every fiscal year, we have increased their what we have asked them for by 5%. This year, we did not ask for an additional fee because we weren't exactly sure what services we were going to be able to provide to the county. So we kept it the same as last year and with our new routes in place until we know exactly what it's going to look like. So my guess is we'll see an increase in our ask for next year, but not this year.
Did that answer your question, Dr. Aldrich?
It does, although I would encourage us to rethink that, especially when we're looking at fuel costs of, especially with diesel close to $5 a gallon.
Thank you. Other questions for Renee?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Escabel?
either for Renee or do we get any numbers from the college about how many students that live off campus that use the service?
The most recent ridership from the college, there are 7 users as of today. And they are receiving service on our on-demand service, so nothing has changed for them at this point.
Is that just students, Renee, or is that also folks who might work there?
That is all riders to and from LCCC as of today.
Okay, thank you for that. Thought there might be more. If there are no other questions for Renee, comments from the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve in the amount of 88,000.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor of the memorandum of understanding, please signify by saying aye.
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 No one's opposed. That item moves forward. Next item, please.
Number 20E, agreement between the city of Cheyenne and WYDOT for a Wyoming Rural Public Transportation Grant to assist in providing a local match for operating funds for the transit program for fiscal year 2024.
Staff report.
Renee Jordan, Cheyenne Transit. This is an agreement with WYDOT. This year, they are going to once again provide us with $300,000 of non-federal funds to use as local match toward our 5307 federal grant. So that is $300,000 less than the city has to give us for our operations this fiscal year. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Renee. You guys have been busy at transit. Questions
sir.
for Renee? Mr. Escabel?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, for Renee, do you foresee any trouble with getting that federal match, or have you had any trouble in the past with it?
No, sir, we have not. We spend it, and as soon as I ask for reimbursement, we usually have it. It takes them just about a month and a half, I think, to get us our reimbursement, but we have always gotten it.
News. Comments from the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve in the amount not to exceed 300,000.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, we might have lost Dr. Aldridge on that, but that item does move forward. So next item, please.
I was an I, by the way.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Number 20F, juvenile housing agreement between the city of Cheyenne and Laramie County for the housing of juvenile detainees in the Laramie County Juvenile Services Center located at the Archer Complex.
Staff report. Welcome, Captain James.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Finance Committee, Captain James, Cheyenne Police Department. What you have before you is a agreement between the city and county for housing juvenile detainees. Very little has changed in this agreement. We have to redo it annually, and the cost has stayed the same of $195 per night per detainee. And I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Captain. Stand by. Question for Captain James? Okay, comments from the public. Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 No one's opposed. That item moves forward. Next item, please.
Number 21A, consideration of bid number E-1-24 for furnishing furniture for 3 new fire stations for the Cheyenne Fire Rescue Department.
Staff report.
Good morning, Chair, through you. Battalion Chief John Fitzgerald with Cheyenne Fire Rescue. On this is for $113,884.98 to furnish beds and other furniture that's needed for the 3 new stations. Stand by for any questions.
Stand by, sir. Questions? Mr. Royball.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Does this also cover like cooking equipment, knives, forks, spoons, that type of thing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not at this point. At this point, these are like recliners, office furniture, big ticket items that we needed to get out for bid because it extended our $10,000 purchasing agreement or understanding through the city on that. So little items like that are still coming, but and I'm trying to get those on discount and through Sam's Club and stuff like that.
Okay, but the city still pays for that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And out of the same account that we're building all these.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Comments from the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the bid from Indoff Incorporated for $113,884.98.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee?
Mr. Chair, real quick, just so you're aware, this is for 3 different companies and not just Indoff making 113. We've got Indoff, we got Ashley, as well as Working Fire Furniture, if that really matters. I just want to make sure that each one of those is separated into 3 different ones for a total of 113,884.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. And I think that's what
It's broken. that way.
Yeah, it's broken down.
it is broken out.
Change my motion.
He was just doing cliff notes.
Right. Thanks for that clarification. Any other comments from the committee? Hearing none. All those in favor of this big consideration, please signify by saying aye.
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 No one's opposed. That item moves forward. Next item, please.
Number 21B, consideration of bid number E-3-24 for furnishing loose equipment for 5 fire apparatus for the Cheyenne Fire Rescue Department.
Staff report.
Again, Mr. Chair, through you, Battalion Chief John Fitzgerald, Cheyenne Fire Rescue. In front of you and for your consideration is the bid for these 5 apparatus. It's 1 ladder truck, 3 fire engines, and then that type 3 that we just purchased that is now sitting down at fleet maintenance. The total is $411,648.63. And I will stand by for questions.
Mr. Royball.
Through you, sir. It says loose equipment. That's everything from hoses to axes to the whatever else you use, shock blocks.
It doesn't include the hose. That's actually a separate side that we've got. I believe we got a grant for that, or we're working on some monies for that. This is strictly for, you're right, for axes, extrication equipment and stuff like that we might need for these new engines. Everything's gonna be equipped except for the hose will be included in that.
Thank you.
Other questions? Comments from the public? Okay, okay. Do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the bid from Front Range Fire Apparatus of Colorado in the amount not to exceed $411,648.63.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee? Dr. Aldrich.
Chairman White, through you, I'm looking over the supporting documentation for this. Just want to make sure I understand correctly. I thought I heard our staff person say that it was 3 apparatuses and 3 of the 1 ladder truck and then 3 of the fire engines. And when I look at the cover sheet for this bid, I'm seeing a quantity of 1 each. Is that a typo, or is this 1 for each fire station? I just want to make sure that we have the correct number of pieces of equipment.
Mr. Chair, through you, item number 1 is the ladder truck, and that's a lump sum of what that's gonna cost for all that. Item number 3, if you look down, is the package 3, which is the type 3 engine. Like I said, that's a 4-wheel drive Freightliner that we have down there. Again, that's a lump sum on that one. And then package number 2, those are for the fire engines themselves. It is actually 3 total fire trucks that we're equipping on that one. And for $254,000. So that one is, we just separate them into, so I can have an idea of when we go back, next time we start purchasing stuff, how much each one of those apparatus cost us to equip and kind of get an idea for funding next time. But you are correct, Dr. Aldridge, there is a total of 5, 3 engines, a ladder truck and a type 3.
Thank you. I would just note that on my copy, at least, it shows a quantity of 1 for each one of those items. So on the spreadsheet.
You are correct. And I have that on mine too. So I don't know if there's a misprint on that, but
Maybe get that corrected before governing body next week.
okay,
Thank
I will
you.
do that.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee? Hearing none, all those in favor of that big consideration, please signify by saying aye.
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 No one's opposed. That item moves forward.
Number 21C, consideration of bid number S-3-24 for an agreement between the City of Cheyenne and Ryman Corp. For the Yellowstone Road and Central Avenue Concrete Repairs Project.
Staff report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, or good afternoon as it is. Doug Klon, City Construction Manager. Before you is the proposed contract for Ryman Corporation for the concrete repairs and replacement on Yellowstone Road at Central Avenue. This project is part of the pavement management program. And as many of you probably know, that area is in desperate need of repair. So we did receive 3 bids, with Ryman Corp being the lowest at $935,576.50. Staff has reviewed this contract, and it is our recommendation that we move forward to approve. And I'll stand for questions.
Thanks, Doug. I have one question. When would this project be scheduled to start? And I hope we give the community plenty of notice for this one. So,
Okay, the goal is to start the project immediately after approval, provided that you approve and move forward to the council meeting for 3rd reading next week. And as soon as we get the notice to proceed to start construction. Let me give you a little background. This will help. So typically we don't put a project like this together this late in the year.
right.
And we worked on this off and on throughout the summer. We did wrestle back and forth with how to best proceed, whether we do some spot repairs, patch it again with asphalt. And we just kind of got down that rabbit hole. But where we ended up is that the best repair is just going to be to replace it. While a lot of folks will look at this and say it's failing concrete, I would argue that it's not failing because it's already outlived its design life. So it's doing what the concrete's gonna do at that age.
Right.
It's just not designed to go on for 40+ years. So,
None of us are.
well, I agree. So that is how we got here to trying to bid this and get it complete in the fall. I have let the contractors that bid this know that if we do get into weather situations, then we will postpone it until the spring. We have a pre-con meeting already this week, even though we do not have an approved contract. We're gonna get all the organization in place. We are going to have the traffic control company put out message boards this week that this proposed construction will hopefully start the week of the 9th of October. And yeah, we're gonna roll the dice.
Okay, thanks. Other questions for Doug? Comments from the public? Mr. White?
Michael White, through you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I have a question for Doug. I don't remember ever a project like this being done during this time frame. So if you could answer that, it'd be appreciative. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, while we don't typically start a contract in this time frame, we often are doing concrete and paving contracts through the month of October. It's all weather dependent. We have a typical cutoff date for paving around the 15th of October, but that's all relative to whether the weather conditions are meetable by our specs. So if we're able to pave into or pour concrete into November and December because the weather allows, then we'll do so. We have a very limited construction season in the city, particularly with Cheyenne Frontier Days. So any good weather that we can take advantage of, regardless of the time of the year, we try to do that. And I hope that answers your question.
He said yes.
Just, Doug, what kind of time frame are we looking here? You'll be able to tear it out and put it back together in 2 weeks or?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, no, it would not be 2 weeks. One of the main goals here is to try and impact the traveling public as little as possible. So in our contract, we do have specified that they must maintain a minimum of 1 lane traffic in each direction at all times. So that does slow the construction process down, but that prevents us from having to create a detour lane, which would take them down Walker Road and Manawal, which is a school route. And even if it weren't a school route, it's just not a very feasible detour. So that will extend the construction time somewhat, but they will be able to work on northbound lane and a southbound lane simultaneously.
Couldn't we take them down the runways? Cause they got new concrete there.
Mr. Chairman, we could ask. We could definitely ask.
We're not going down there. That was pretty good though. Mr. Cobb, did you have anything to add to this?
Chairman White, through you, I just wanted to add that it'd be a great idea to go down the runways, but I don't think it'd work. Anyway, no, I would like to tell you that I have coordinated with WYDOT on this. And so WYDOT actually is going to go out for the second phase of this. They're going to wait till after Frontier Days to start. So their part of this share is the west side and the south side. So they've got slab repairs that are coming also then this summer. I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve in the amount not to exceed $935,576.50.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor of this big consideration, please signify by saying aye.
I,
No one's opposed. Good luck, Mr. Klein. Next item.
Number 21D, consideration to purchase between the city of Cheyenne and RCN Technologies for the purchase of 12 connected emergency blue light call stations.
Staff report.
Jason Sanchez, Community Wrecking Events. Mr. Chair, I want to kind of back up and just share a little bit of how we got to this request today. For the last couple of years, our department, as well as compliance, police, and public works, have been working on making a significant amount of improvements to the safety in our parking structures. we've been trying to get the old call stations repaired or operational, and we just have not been able to accomplish that. We've worked with different security companies, the company that installed them. And we're kicking this can down the road, and we weren't able to come up with a solution to fix the existing call stations. So we've been working with T-Mobile and RCN Technologies, and what the stations are is they are a unit that would be placed, 2 of them per floor in the Spiker, 1 per floor in the Cox Garage, and 1 over at the 17th Street parking lot. And what they have on them is a blue light. So if somebody has an emergency, they go and they could press this button. There's a blue light that would flash. There is also an interactive call station. So there's a camera that will capture the person's image that is pushing the button, and they can immediately start talking to dispatch of what the emergency is. There is a second camera on these units that can capture an image up to 110 feet away. So it will be surveilling the area. But the second camera that is flush mount, it would be capturing the image of the person that actually pressed the button. The reason that's important to us is so that we're not sure if people would randomly try to go and touch the button, and then we're dispatching. So this gives the dispatch operation an opportunity to know that there is indeed a need for assistance. There's a horn on these as well that would sound and also be part of the back and forth communication. It also gives us an opportunity to display emergency notifications if necessary. So if there's a tornado in the area, or if there's a reason for alarm, we can give a public notification through that system. I have Ben White with RCN Technologies and Jesse Granius with T-Mobile on the line so that they could answer any technical questions. But I just want to reiterate, we've been working on this as a group for a couple of years to fix the existing call stations. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know that they've worked from the moment they installed those originally. They aren't operational right now. We can't get anyone to fix them. We've called power companies and the security companies. And our goal is to make the parking structures as safe as possible. We've taken a lot of steps over the last couple of years, fixing all of the lights, repainting parking, removing vandalism, working with the police to have the transients moved out when necessary. We added lights in the stairwells, motion detector lights, backup battery lights. This is one of the last steps in that effort to make the parking structures more safe and secure. I'll stand by for any questions.
Sure, there are going to be some. I have a question, then I'll go with Dr. Roybal or Dr. Roybal. Sorry, Mr. Roybal. You didn't know to go for it. Exactly. I'd be afraid if there was a degree for that. Jason, with all due respect, and I really appreciate the efforts to make the parking garages more safe and secure. I think we all want to see that. But if we weren't able to get the existing technology fixed and in good working order, do we have safeguards in place to make sure that this equipment's going to work before we spend all this money again? Because I think that's a fair question, considering we weren't able to get what we had to work as it should.
If I could, I would like Ben White to comment on the warranty of this equipment. Ben, if you could unmute yourself. Or Jesse.
So I have Jesse, and Jesse, you can unmute yourself. I also have a Just S, which I don't know who that is. I'm not sure if that's a person that needs to talk, but otherwise I don't see any of those names. I see a Sarl Carr. Not sure if they're with the company as well, but Jesse, if you want to go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you. The partner RCN and Ben White is they plan to do the installation and testing of the equipment ahead of for you. And we did some research ahead of time on the locations for connectivity, and they are in excellent T-Mobile coverage. But from a warranty perspective on the hardware, I'm going to have to defer to RCN, but happy to answer any other questions. Thank you.
If if somebody from RCN could communicate with us before next week or be available next Monday night, that would be great. Other questions for Jason?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Escabel?
Yeah, through you, certainly vandalism is gonna be a big concern. But I definitely see the need. Have we started looking at any other places in the city where we could employ this type of technology? For example, our parks. I mean, certainly can think of a few instances we've had in Martin Luther King Junior Park where it would have probably, possibly saved lives.
Mr. Chair, through you, Mr. Escobar, I think we could explore that at any time. They use these on college campuses and in other communities, parks and areas that you mentioned. Our first goal and what we've been working on is the parking structures. We have a funding mechanism through the 6 penny for downtown improvements that we would utilize for this purchase and installation. But once we know that that they work the way we desire, then we could explore other locations.
Thanks, Jason. Dr. Aldrich.
Chairman White, through you, first and foremost, I really appreciate Jason's proactive work in this area. I know this has been an ongoing concern by our downtown merchants and by individuals who rent parking spaces in the parking garage. But I am curious as to whether there is an ongoing monthly fee for this service, or if this is once that's installed, that's all inclusive for a number of years, what that might look like and what we need to be planning for moving forward.
Thanks, Dr. Aldrich. That's a great question. Jason, I saw somewhere in the packet 3 years, but I don't know if that's like the term of the contract and if there's a monthly fee included in that. Go ahead and
Mr.
clarify
Chair,
if you can.
so the purchase is for the equipment. There is, and we estimate the cost to be about $10 per month for the service per unit. So about $120. We're currently paying $180 for monitoring services. So it would be, so it would be savings on that end.
Mr. Roybal?
Who are we paying $180 a month for stuff that doesn't work too?
Mr. Chair, through you, that's a great question. So what we have is a contract with CPS, and we pay them to monitor those devices.
Other questions for the committee?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Aldrich?
Chairman White, through you, I'm just curious. We've been paying this amount to CPS to monitor those devices that we're not sure have worked since they were installed, Jason. And I'm just curious as to if they've ever actually received any calls on those, or if we've ever gotten any data on the use of those since they were initially installed.
Mr. Chair, I will dig deeper. I don't believe, I'm not sure if they have received any calls on those. I asked the question, what are you monitoring if they're not active? The response was that they weren't aware that they weren't working. The only way they would know is if there was a test conducted. This was all discovered during our time of the concerns brought to us by the downtown merchants and people utilizing the structure. We were under the impression that those call stations were operational. And again, during our discovery, we found that they were not. We worked to try to have them repaired and make sure that they were working. We were not able to accomplish that. Instead of continuously kicking the can down the road and not having a result or a solution to the problem, we moved on to this.
Thank you for your due diligence.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. And I think I can speak for my colleagues. Anything we can do on the front end this time to prevent any type of mistake on the back end, we need to do that, because this has been a concern from downtown businesses for quite some time. And now that we know that even if they wanted to make a call, they weren't able to, probably a legitimate concern. So I appreciate being proactive to try and find a solution, but anything that we can do to prevent getting into something like what we've been in will be certainly appreciated.
Agree 100%.
Mr. Escabel.
Well, I concur with that, but certainly we need to hear at least from maybe Cheyenne PD or downtown merchants. There's got to be some incidents that have happened in the past that warrant us moving forward with this. And I'd like to hear that next Monday.
Any further comments from the committee? Okay. All those in favor?
Motion.
Oh, sorry. Do I have a motion? I didn't do a motion from the committee. Motion from the committee. Sorry about that.
It's been a free for all over here.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve in the amount not to exceed $145,301.60.
And the doctor seconds it.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor of this consideration to purchase, please signify by saying aye.
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 No one's opposed. That item moves forward. There are no other items on our agenda. This meeting is adjourned. Have a good day.